What has been the best first date you went on? Story 1. We talked for hours, got drunk, and ended up at a strip. We discovered we had almost all the same interests in life, in music, and in hobbies. We dated on and off for a couple years, but she was just a hassle and a giant handful to deal with. We did not communicate the same ways, which often led to giant misunderstandings and fights. She was fun when it was good, though. Story 2. Unconventional. I was living in a rehab for alcohol addiction. Had been there 3 years. She came to meet me at mine in East London. We walked to Brick Lane, chilled out at the markets, accidentally joined a demonstration, had coffee, walked along the canal, went shopping, back to mine, made wraps, watched Finding Dory. She has arrived at 12 p.m. and left just after 12 a.m. We've been married 2.5 years and have an 18-month-old boy. I'm ducking blessed. Story 3. Wasn't formally a date, but basically ended up being a blind date that spawned organically, haha. Bit of setup. But it's a nice story. I was visiting my cousin up in Seattle in 2019 and took some time off to set up a long weekend. He had work on Friday, and I went out to find stuff to do till he was off later around 5-ish. Walked over to Pike Place Market and was standing in line for breakfast at this Russian bakery. I just struck up a conversation with the pretty girl behind me when I handed her the menu that was being passed down the line. She had a very unique accent that I couldn't quite pin down. Probably not a native, and I was intrigued, so I just continued chatting. We talked the whole time in line, got my food. Then I decided on a whim to just stick around and wait for her. Why not? What did I have to lose? She got her food, and then we decided to walk over to a nearby grassy area to sit around and eat breakfast and talk. We were both visiting from out of town. She came up from the Bay Area. I was visiting from San Diego, and just being tourists exploring certain parts of Seattle. She was there on a business trip that had just finished up and had a flight out the next afternoon, so she only had one day to explore the area. We sat around another 15 to 20-ish minutes just talking and getting to know each other. She was a Russian girl who was born and raised in the UK. That explained the accent, but had moved to the Bay Area in 2017 for work. I'll call her Elle moving forward. This was my second trip to Seattle, had some familiarity with touristy stuff around those parts, so I decided to show Elle around Pike Place Market. Ended up walking around and checking out shops, sampling free samples, and just checking out the tourist attractions all throughout that area. Elle mentioned that she had a discount deal for an under-the-city tour and asked if I wanted to come along. Decided sure, why not? I've got nothing else till later. Ended up going on a 45-ish minute history tour throughout some underground parts of Seattle buildings and getting an overview of the downtown scene. Super interesting. Afterwards, we walked around and talked some more before deciding to hit up a bar to continue the conversation around 3:30. My cousin had texted me a little earlier, and I let him know, hey, I met a girl and I'm having a great time hanging out, so I might be late. He was totally cool about it and said, go ahead and enjoy. He would just meet up with some coworkers and catch up with me later that night. Felt a little bad, but figured we'd make it up by just hanging out the entire weekend anyway. Randomly hitting off with a stranger in another city just doesn't happen all the time, right? Let's see where this ends up. Anyway, we ended up being there for like 3 hours just talking about anything and everything over a few drinks. No one was there when we first sat at the bar. It was completely empty aside from another pair of people out by the tables, but by the time we were getting ready to leave, it was completely packed. And we both could tell that the bartender was kind of just hoping for us to go already, haha. Both of us were hungry again, so we just did a quick Google search for any specialty foods that we should check out for dinner. Apparently, Seattle is known for teriyaki. Cool stuff. Stopped by the nearest hole in the wall that served it with good ratings and just ordered some food and continued talking. We were there until closing when they kicked us out around 8:30. We walked around for a little more after that, but then I remembered that my cousin had given me his keys to get back in. He was out drinking with coworkers, so I definitely had to get back before he did, so unfortunately, I had to head back. Let Elle know, and we began saying our goodbyes by giving each other a hug. Before we split off, she asked me whether I had any social media and if we could keep in touch. I was super flattered, mentioned that I only used Messenger but not really Facebook or anything else, but yeah, let's get it set up. Went to add her on Messenger, but it turns out you can only add via FB itself. Did not know that. Proceed to scramble for like a minute as I signed in on my phone to reactivate my account and trying passwords until I eventually got in to add her as a friend and then send a quick text message. Success! We each gave each other another hug, said our goodbyes, and then headed our separate ways. That was pretty long-winded, but it was easily one of the best dates I'd ever had. Hours felt like minutes, and we were vibing with conversations that ranged from work to growing up, to relationships, to music, to life in general. It was awesome. I could have spoken to her for hours and hours longer. I only had a chance to visit the Bay Area once since then on a trip. But alas, bad luck led to me narrowly missing her during the holidays as she was out of town. Then the pandemic hit and yeah, hasn't really worked out. We'll talk every now and then via FB every few months, maybe a happy birthday or general, hey, how's it going? But man, it's just not the same. I really would like to see her again someday once things get back to normal. That was just such a great day. I'd be very interested in seeing whether we have the same chemistry next time we meet, or if it was just lightning in a bottle on vacation. We'll just have to see. Story 4. I don't have tons of experience because I had my first date ever the past year, but it was nice. We FaceTimed a bit because COVID, and once we were both clear and knew each other for a bit, I went and picked him up. He was in a different town, and took him back to my place where he stayed for the weekend. So our first date was essentially smoking candy and flipping in my apartment and just chilling for a weekend, cooking good food and going for walks and cow. It was great fun, honestly. IDK what dating in public conventionally is gonna be like, but just vibing with another guy smoking some candy and getting to know him was great. Story 5. Nothing fancy or particularly romantic. Just Guinness at an Irish pub. Hours of talking about everything. Hobbies, family, work, friends, values, books, holidays, the documentary I saw the day before and so on. Some kissing. I liked that part. Maybe a boring answer, but with the right person you don't always need to be or do something special. We live near the pub now and recently had a Guinness there, with our baby in a stroller while we waited to go pick up our 3-year-old from kindergarten. Great man, and still great Guinness. Story 6. When I was 15, I was supposed to go on a class trip to a university, but me and this girl were singled out by the director and told we weren't being allowed to go due to circumstances. Long story. So we had already had to ask permission from all our teachers, so we basically not expected in class. So I asked her if she wants to get in my car and let's just leave. It was a beater car. We drove around, then ended up having breakfast at a place. We split the check. Then we found a place that did kayaking in a harbor. So I said, fudge it, let's do that if you want. So we did. I offered to pay. My dad had given me 2 gift cards that his work had given him for some Starbucks and movie passes. So we went and did that too. I paid because I had the gift cards. Basically, we were on an accidental date. We went to a grocery store, but bulk candy, and had some too. We had a really good time. The next day, everyone in school teased us that we went on a date. We denied it. We didn't go out on a second date, but we remained friends. The fun part about this story is fast forward a couple years, and a few months after high school was over and we started to hang out and eventually started going out. And then, yes, eventually we got married and have been now for 12 years. Therefore, I can honestly say that was my best first date ever. Story 7. We were supposed to go to a brewery, but new COVID restrictions canceled those plans. So we went to a vineyard instead. The vineyard was almost an hour away and we would be driving together. So basically, it would have been awkward as all fudge having to drive home together. Anyway, the date at the vineyard was great. We drove back and started jamming to some random peach old CDs in my car. When we got to my house, I asked if she wanted to hang out and she said yes. While looking for movies together, we kissed and ended up cuddling on the couch and watched a few movies together. I think the whole date probably ended up being like 5 to 6 hours and it was great. We have our year anniversary coming up in the next few weeks. Story 8. With the woman who became my wife. A local guy who holds a massive summer party at his vacation house near our family house invites neighbors over to join the party rather than fume about the noise, absolute lack of parking, etc. Usually it's a pig roast theme, but this year it's a huge piece of beef roasting in a coal pit. I head over to the bar and draw a pint from a spigot in the side of a fridge someone converted into a Keeganator to terminate time until food is ready. A pretty woman there wearing a very alluring shade of red lipstick and sunglasses asks me to pour her one as well. We get to talking. I told her why I was there, and she informed me her friend's husband was there doing the music and she went to keep her company. We talk while watching drunken adults play with lawn darts, and we decide to blow the party for a bit, and I show her the neighborhood. We get back too late as her friend and ride home had left, but a friend's sister gives us a ride to the ferry. We talk all through the ferry and bus ride and have some light refreshments once at her sister's house. Cat is right there, very suspicious of me, and we decide to take a walk in the moonlight. The cat gets out and follows us around the neighborhood, darting from lawn to lawn, checking in with us before disappearing back into the bush. On a dark trail lit only by moonlight, we get a bit amorous, and I get to see one boob in the pale moonlight. The cat keeps track of us, but keeps vanishing into the brush again. We share a bed for the night, but no close relationship takes place, just a lot of touching and kissing. I leave in the morning with the path of my life changed. I still have the bus receipt and an empty box of Tic Tacs someplace. Story 9. I hate that I wasted this first date on a girl that ended up friend-zoning me, but it was pretty cool. First, I won tickets in a contest done by a radio station to the county fair. I had saved up a bunch of money so we could do anything we wanted there without worrying about cost. I really liked the date I planned, even though it didn't take me anywhere with her. Story 10. Went to Walmart, got snacks, and then sat in the back of my car in the parking lot, and then proceeded to pay much more attention to each other than the movie we were watching. Dated for just over 2 months, but realized that long distance just wasn't working out. Story 11. With my current SO. We chatted on Tinder for a bit, had a great conversation, and we made plans to go hiking as a first date. In retrospect, probably not a smart move for a first date. Anyways, we show up, and we start walking through this forest that is substantially bigger than I imagined. I was a bit nervous, but the reciprocity in conversation was so good that I almost didn't notice 2.5 hours went by. We talked the whole time, had awesome back and forth, laughed a lot, and fed off of each other that there was not an awkward moment throughout the entire hike. We even joked about how it would have been such a disaster if at any point it had turned super awkward, or if the other person didn't have anything to say. I've had amazing first dates in the past, but for me this one definitely takes the cake. Story 12. We went to an American furniture warehouse that had a little cafe in. We just walked around, sat on furniture we could never afford, and chatted over coffee. It was super fun, no pressure, and just very relaxing. We didn't end up dating, but we're still friends, and he told me he used that first date to get his now wife. Story 13. My boyfriend and I agreed to meet at a BBQ joint after discussing our love of ribs and my refusal to act dainty on a date. We sat and talked for so long that we lost track of time, and they started turning out the lights to cue us to leave. It was like a movie scene. Story 14. It was a semi-blind date with another couple. We met briefly a couple of months before for a bit, and the other couple set up the date. We had dinner, played pool. The usual first day nonsense. At the end of the night, I dropped her off and leaned in for a hug and a kiss on the cheek, and she stuck her tongue down my throat. After the date, she called her mom and left a voicemail saying she's gonna marry me. The voicemail was played at our wedding. Story 15. I met my wife through a matchmaker in the 90s. Every week, I would show up to my matchmaker's office and I'd be shown VHS tapes of local single people that were clients of hers. If I liked a tape, she would show that person my tape. And if she felt like we'd be a good match, she'd set us up on a date. My matchmaker set me up on a blind date, and the two of us went bowling and she absolutely whooped me. Then we walked around the area, got a few drinks, and 6 months later we were picking out a ring together. Still send my matchmaker Christmas cards to this day. Story 16. Huge Bob Dylan fan here. A friend of a friend who is also a rock critic invited me to join her in the 4th row at Madison Square Garden to help identify his songs. She even took me to dinner first and drinks in her hotel suite after. She lived in LA, so it was doomed from the start. But I had a great time that night. Story 17. I took my first ever ecstasy pill in a dingy old club in my hometown. I bumped into him on the dance floor just as I was coming up. He was absolutely glorious. I loved him a little right from the beginning. We danced, smoked, and shared a Vicks nasal inhaler for a little menthol rush. He kissed me at the end of the night. It was perfect. 18 years. 2 kids later, I still think he's glorious. I still have that crusty old Vicks inhaler too. Story 18. Blind date set up by mutual friend. Immediate attraction and chemistry. We both loved beer, bars, and karaoke. Did all 3 over an 8-hour period while publicly making out and getting handsy. She had 2 Mu-H drinks, so I offered to drive her home. She lives with her parents while in graduate school, so we pulled into a high school parking lot and had close relationship in my car. We ended up dating 3 or 4 months. Story 19. It has to be my first date with my current, and I hope last boyfriend. We had been talking for like 2 weeks as we met online, and we decided to meet each other in person. We didn't do much, just to the sky out in his town. He lives outside the city, but close enough, 30 minutes drive. And we truly fell in love that day. Story 20. I had 2 first dates with my ex-boyfriend. Once was years before we became a couple, and the second was when we were officially together. On our first date as a couple, he took me on a short road trip that took less than 30 hours. We had to go back immediately because I still have to go back to school. Our relationship was a secret, and my mom thought I was on a sleepover. We went up north, up till Pagudpud, Philippines, and we only stopped for a few moments whenever we pass by a beach spot or when we want to relax for a while and eat, and of course to sleep. It wasn't much. We didn't spend that much money, mostly for gas and food, plus overnight stay here was cheap. But it was the best memory that I ever had with him. LDR sucks major balls, so we had to cherish every minute that we can get. My peach was grounded when I got home because my mom kind of found out, but it was totally worth it. The only regret that I had was that we didn't take that much photos. Only about 4 to 5, I think. Story 21. I met my girlfriend at a uni press, but only in passing as she wasn't coming out that evening. She was super smiley at me and gave me a huge hug before we all left, and I invited her to my flat's press the next night. One of my flatmates tells us that we were chatting as if no one else existed in the world. Have been together just over 2 years and living in another country for a year soon. Story 22. I drove up to his hometown, about an hour. He gave me a beautiful present. We'd been talking online for months. Oh no, pandemic. And I called him a nerd since I panicked. Not a gracious gift receiver. He thought it was funny because I got flustered. We walked to get some coffee, sat by the river enjoying the spring weather, popped into a few bookstores, had a great lunch. It was about 5.5 hours of wonderful conversation and laughs. Had a nice hug at the end of our date. I was a little surprised he didn't go in for a kiss. There's a significant height difference, so not something I could have easily done myself. Also, it took him 2 more dates to kiss me, but well worth the wait. I think the main takeaway from it was that I was instantly comfortable with him. I was nervous before I saw him, but then I was totally calm and happy. It just feels meant to be. Story 23. I took him to my favorite hiking spot that has beautiful views of the city and miles of prairie. He hadn't been there before, and I think I impressed him. When we got back to the car, we just sat and talked and listened to music for hours. We really connected, and I couldn't believe this tall, handsome man was so into me. That was 5 years ago. We're now engaged and getting married in Hawaii this fall. Story 24. Took my wife to an amusement park. It was the middle of the summer. I was sweating through every piece of clothing I had on, and I fell madly in love with her. It was perfect because while we waited in line, we were forced to talk to each other. The lines weren't terribly long, but standing with someone for 10 to 15 minutes in a line over and over again allowed us to get to know each other, and it was broken up by some fun rides. Our second date was IHOP, and we talked in a booth for hours over pancakes and coffee. We've been together ever since. 13 years in June. Story 25. The one with my husband. We had been talking for a few weeks at that point, and it was just so smooth and effortless. Then, when we went out, he warned me ahead of time that he may be quiet and that he hoped that wasn't an issue. It wasn't an issue anyway, but he wasn't quiet at all, and we talked for a few hours nonstop. He took me to a comic book store after dinner and then for a walk, and it was just so lovely and natural. I knew by the end of the night that I was going to marry him. Story 26. Happened around September 2020. She and I went to dinner, and then for a walk around the neighborhood and through a park and did nothing but talk, laugh, crack terrible jokes, and discuss philosophies and such. It was such an intellectually hilarious and insightful conversation, and just so fluid and natural. Started dating on the 8th of December, and we're almost 6 months in. Keep in mind that we were friends for about a year and a bit prior, plus everything between us was, and still is, natural, and it feels amazing. The compatibility is unlike anything either of us have ever experienced. Mind you, we both came from toxic pasts and relationships, so when we clicked, we flipping snapped together and welded. We're so in love, and it's not that honeymoon nonsense. This is real. Obviously, things are changing, but it's just growing and becoming stronger every single day. We've accomplished in a few months what took my last relationship 3 years to even sniff. It's incredible, and I'm so in love. I'm 1000% sure she's the one. Story 27. We went to university together and had to take the train every day for an hour to do so. One morning, neither of us felt up for it, and he suggested we got off the train in a random city. I asked why, and he said to see the beauty. We did, and had a full day out in a new city, just trying out everything we would find interesting. Ate lunch at a little local diner. Saw a dance performance in the street. Had ice cream and split a bottle of white wine. Sitting on a bench in the summer wind. I also found this little antique store and brought a 50s camera, and lo and behold, it worked. So we got some film and documented what we did. The day ended with us sitting in a park, listening to an open-air concert with one of my favorite bands that happened to be there, and eating cherries from a road shop. I will never forget how happy and at ease I was the whole time. There was not a direct romantic vibe since I was dating someone else, but I realized then that spending time with him was so effortless and made me wish that all days were like that. Still haven't had the film developed. It lays in my drawer. Untouched. Never told him I was in love with him for a whole year. Now I'm married, happily so, and he's a filmmaker. Just like he said he would. Even though I still cherish that day. He make me leave by then boyfriend by showing me how easy it could be to be together. Story 28. We walked around downtown, exploring shops and had gyros, joking that we didn't have to worry about having funky onion breath from said gyros since both of our breaths stank. Stopped and to the sky out by the lake until it got dark and cold. From the start, we just had a wonderful connection. He was so easy to talk to, and we talked and laughed around for hours. While we walked back to his car, we held hands. He reached for mine first, and that stuck out to me because most men I knew wouldn't stand for that, but for me, it felt completely natural, and he made me feel so comfortable. And yeah, we ended up having close relationship on that first date. 5 stars. Story 29. We started talking through an online dating app, pre-Tinder, and decided to meet in person after 2 months. We met up in a Sheetz parking lot. I jumped in her car, and we went to dinner at Carolina Ale House. After a nice dinner, we went and saw Gatsby in theaters. I don't remember much of the movie. She started holding my hand in the beginning, and that's all I could think about. After the movie, she drove me out to a small playground. It was almost midnight, so no one was there. We sat and talked for a little bit, then shared our first kiss. We went back to Sheetz and sat in her car talking until dawn. Neither of us wanted it to end. Here we are 8 years later, almost to the day, married and watching Brooklyn 99 together.